friends, welcome back to my channel, or welcome to my channel if you haven't been here before. I'm Erin, and for today's video we are going to be doing another video on Mandela effects. So if you don't know what a Mandela effect is, it is a collective misremembering of a fact or an event. And the reason why it's called the Mandela effect is because a lot of people used to believe that Nelson Mandela died in jail. Well, no, he didn't. He actually died a free man. So that's where the term Mandela effect comes from. Now if you dig really deep into the rabbit hole, there's people saying that these Mandela effects are proof of like time warps and all this weird, strange stuff to me. I mean, if you believe in the whole time warp thing and like the parallel continuums and all that stuff, that's cool. I don't know that I necessarily believe that, but I do think that it's weird that some stuff you would have sworn was true for your whole life and it's not. Kind of like the Berenstain Bears. That one blows me for a loop every time, and if you don't know about that one, check out my first video because I talked about that, and I'll link that one down below. But anyways, I'm gonna jump into some new Mandela effects. Apologize for any snoring you may hear. I know I've apologized in other videos for this before, but my old dog Dixie likes to sleep under my desk and she snores because she's a Boston Terrier and that's what they do best. The other thing they do best is fart. But anyway, let's jump into these Mandela effects. Alright, so the first one is about good old Billy Graham. If you don't know who Billy Graham was, he was an evangelist, religious dude. I am definitely guilty of this Mandela effect. Now, Billy Graham died on February 21st of 2018. That's this year. When he actually passed away, I was like, wait a minute. Didn't he already die? Like, I was convinced that this man had already died. Clearly he didn't because he just died this year. And apparently I'm not the only one who thought this. Oh, sorry about that, Billy. Didn't mean to put you in your grave before you were actually in your grave. But I was pretty convinced that you were dead before you were dead. Now, a lot of people believe that he had been dead before because they remember seeing his funeral on TV. However, he wasn't dead, so his funeral was never on TV. But anyway, that's Mandela effect number one of when Billy Graham actually died. So this next one I read about and I was like, I was kind of skeptical, and it has to do with the number of states and people misremembering how many states there are. Now, I took a lot of road trips growing up. We used to drive a lot of places. My family is a military family. Most of my siblings, who are a lot older than I am, they were in the military, so we would drive across the country to go see them. So like, I grew up in New York, about an hour and a half north of New York City. One of our road trips we took, we went from New York to Oklahoma to Texas back up to New York. So that's one hell of a road trip, folks. And I was in elementary school. So one of the things that my parents used to do to keep me entertained was we would play the state game. So we would say either a capital, and you would have to name what state it was the capital belonged in, or you would say state and you would have to say what the capital is. So I learned pretty early on there were 50 states and could name them and their capitals. Now if you asked me to do that all today, I could probably name all the states. Don't think I could name all the capitals. But back then, hey, I was sharp. So thanks, Mom and Dad. But anyway, into this Mandela effect with the state numbers. Apparently a lot of people get the number of states wrong. They often say that there are 51 or 52 states. No, there are 50 states in the United States. Now, what may be confusing to some people is that the US actually has a whole bunch of territories. And one of those territories, for example, is Puerto Rico. Puerto Rico isn't a state, but it's technically a US territory. So that may be where people throw in that there are 51 or 52 states. Guam is another territory that's ours, I believe. So that's probably why people get confused and think that there's more than 50 states. There's not. There's only 50 of them. A 5 and a 0. Anyway, let's move on to the next Mandela Effect. So the next one has to do with the canonization of Mother Teresa. There are a ton of people who believe that Mother Teresa was canonized as a saint in the 1990s, while she was still alive. Guess what? Nope. Those people tend to remember that Pope John Paul II was the one who approved Mother Teresa's canonization. Not true. Mother Teresa was actually canonized as a saint on September 4th of 2016, which was 19 years after she died. Now, truth be told, this is going back to the Billy Graham thing. I didn't realize that Mother Teresa had already been dead for almost 20 years in 2016. I thought that she had actually died more recently than that, but guess not. I guess she had passed away a while ago. Moving on to our next Mandela Effect, and that has to do with everybody's favorite monkey, Curious George. Now, I grew up reading Curious George books and watching some Curious George videos, and I have to say that I never really had this Mandela Effect happen to me because I kind of knew already. And that is that many people have memories of seeing illustrations of Curious George swinging from the trees and other various objects by his tail. Well, that would be a little difficult because good old Curious George, he doesn't have a tail. So he couldn't have been swinging from the trees by it. So I guess this is one of those things where people just kind of probably associate that most monkeys, like Curious George, who I believe was a chimpanzee, would have a tail. But since he is a chimpanzee, he wouldn't have a tail because regular chimps don't have a tail. Does that make any sense to anybody? It made sense to me. Anyway, Curious George is a chimp. That's why he doesn't have a tail. He's not like a howler monkey or some other kind of monkey where they have a tail. So there's that. The next Mandela Effect we're jumping into is about the Lindbergh baby. Now, this is one of the most famous kidnapping cases ever. And I eventually would actually like to do a video on it, so be on the lookout for that eventually. It is about Charles Lindbergh's baby was kidnapped. So for those who don't know, back in 1932, Charles Lindbergh was a famous pilot and his child was kidnapped from their home. A lot of people believe that the baby was never found. However, the baby was found dead on May 12th, 1932. Now, this is me going back to my whole synopsis on this Mandela Effect. For whatever reason, before I read into this, I used to think that they did find the Lindbergh baby and that he was alive. I had really no idea that he had died, which would be another reason why I would like to do a video on it, because I could look a little bit more into the case and definitely go more in depth with it. Anyway, there's more than just the baby being found dead as part of this Mandela Effect. There are also several, misrememberings of how the Lindberghs spelled their last name. So, there are some people who believe that it was spelled Lindberg. That's wrong. Then there are others, who I was in this group, thought it was spelled Lindburgh. Nope, that's wrong too. Then there are a third group of people who believe that it is spelled Lindburg. Nope, that's wrong too. So the correct spelling of Lindbergh is Lindbergh. Now we're moving on to the next Mandela Effect. And this has to do with the Tank Man from Tiananmen Square. So a lot of people remember Tank Man, who was a protester who stood in front of a line of tanks in China in Tiananmen Square. Now, a lot of people have a really vivid memory of him actually being killed by these tanks. Like he literally was mowed over by the tanks, according to most people. However, the identity and the fate of that man known as Tank Man is not actually known. So there is no video of him being run over. In fact, there's a video of him climbing onto the tank, I believe, but there's no actual video of him being run over. So Is there a chance that he was run over? Absolutely. But do we have proof that he was run over? I don't think that there is any proof. I mean, I've looked it up, and there's no real video of the Tank Man being run over by these tanks in Tiananmen Square, which I thought was interesting because I was one of those people who was quite convinced that he was dead because he was run over by the tank, and it turns out that that might not be true. So, moving on to something a little bit lighter than people getting run over by tanks, we will move on to our good old friends who have the best baloney in the world, Oscar Mayer. Now, you all know the famous jingle of Oscar Mayer, right? If you don't, I'll sing it for you. My baloney has a first name, it's O-S-C-A-R. My baloney has a second name, it's M-A-Y-E-R. Oh, I love to eat it every day, and if you ask me what I'll say, 'cause Oscar Mayer has a way with B-O-L-O-G-N-A. I can hear you cheering in the background. So a lot of people think that it was been spelled M-E-Y-E-R, and guess what? It's never been spelled M-E-Y-E-R, it's always been M-A-Y-E-R. So there's that one. Now, if you want to know the second jingle for Oscar Mayer that's very famous, you're going to have to look that one up. I only do one song per video, folks. That's it for today on the singing. So, the next one that we have to do has to do with Monocle Man, and to be honest with you, this one still blows my mind and throws me for a loop, and would have me maybe be convinced that there are alternate realities that we're living in, and this is what causes Mandela effects. A lot of people, including myself, have remembered seeing the Monocle Man with a monocle. Well, guess what? Apparently, the Monocle Man has never had a monocle. Now, I could have sworn up and down that at least on one chance card or get out of jail free card or going to jail or whatever, that the Monocle Man has a monocle on. But I looked, no monocle. So like I said, this is one that kind of blows my mind. It's right up there with Berenstain Bears and Smokey the Bear, who's Smokey Bear. It's just a little mind-blowing to me. So apparently he's never had a monocle. Maybe he should get one. And I guess that maybe part of the reason that people think he has a monocle is I think people are getting him confused with Mr. Peanut, or whatever the hell the Planters Peanut guy's name is. He has a monocle, by golly. So maybe that's who I'm getting him confused with, but I could have sworn that there was like a chance or a community chest card or something that had him with a monocle on it. But I actually went and looked at like different sets of chance and community chest cards, like online. I looked at my own. No monocle. So, that's my rant about the Monocle Man being convinced that he once upon a time had a monocle. So for the last Mandela effect for today, it has to do with a cartoon character, and that is Pikachu. Specifically, this has to do with Pikachu's tail. So a lot of people believe that Pikachu has a black tip at the end of his tail. And to be quite honest with you, I was one of those people. I thought that Pikachu had a black tip at the end of his tail. And I will be the first one to admit that I never really got into Pokemon or the games or any of this. I did try Pokemon Go for a while when that first came out, but it got old quick for me. Probably because I don't really go anywhere, so you just keep getting the same Pokemon in your own yard and house and stuff, so maybe that's why I didn't like Pokemon Go so much. But anyway, back to going into Pokemon's tail here. A lot of people believe that there's a black tip at the end of his tail, and there is not a black tip at the end of his tail. And reading into this a little bit, there is probably an explanation for why people think he has a black tip at the end of his tail. And that has to do with good old-fashioned unlicensed merchandise that has sold. So probably there are some knockoffs or dupes of Pikachu that are not licensed by Pokemon itself that do in fact have a Pikachu with a black tip at the end of its tail. The more you know. But anyway guys, that's it for this video for today. If you liked it, go ahead and give me a big thumbs up. If you haven't already, go ahead and hit the subscribe button down below to see more videos like this. I do plan on doing some more Mandela Effect videos in the future because there are a lot of them out there that I never even knew about. but now I do. It's that whole stay woke thing. But anyway, guys, I hope you enjoyed it, and I will catch you next time. Bye!